welcome back to the Over in 8 Minutes podcast. My name is Sam Matthews, and I'm glad to have you back for another episode. This week, I'm joined by a man that's famous in the podcast world, one of the OGs, got the top recording rugby podcast in the world on Spotify exclusive. We've got Mr. Andy Rowe, one of the men that is famous for everything and anything. Before we get started, guys, I'm going to mention Wild Haggis Protein again. Wild Haggis have been kind enough to become a partner with the Over in 8 Minutes podcast. You can get everything you need from fat-burning supplements, pre-workout, protein powder, and their own range of exclusive gym wear. All you have to do is use code OVERIN80 for 10% off. That's OVERIN80. Put that in all block capitals and you're good to go. Right, Andy Rowe, let's get started with today's episode. How are you, good sir? Most important question.
Hey, I'm good. There's a hell of an intro. I don't know if you've got the right guy on your show, but the sounds of it, you really gassed me up there, didn't you?
Mate, I was saying before we came on the air and got it going, I felt a bit of nervousness because you're such an OG in the podcast scene. You were doing it long before people were cool. So there's a bit of...
I mean, there's definitely no need to be nervous. And you know, like I feel like sometimes, you know, I piggybacked a little bit, you know, from being there at the start. It doesn't necessarily mean you're anywhere near the top. It's just you were early. So I've been very fortunate in that respect.
Mate, you're there and you contribute to the podcast we all know and love. Many of the podcasts we all know and love. You're more than just one, as it says behind you. So we're going to get started. What we do, I like to break the ice. I like to get myself a few talking points to go here. So we just do a bit of quick fire questions. Nothing strenuous. A little bit of would you rather's.
Oh, here we go.
Just say what you see. Easy. It's easy. It's nothing incriminating. I've not got anything bad in there for you. Right, mate. We'll get started.
Hopefully I don't do myself a disservice then. Here we go.
Mate, you're fine. You're Kiwi. You're already everybody's favourite. You can say nothing wrong in the British Isles when you're Kiwi.
You're really gassing me out.
Mate, no, honestly, you'll be fine. Right, look, for example, first one, tea or coffee?
Recently turned to coffee. Since going through lockdown, I've started drinking coffee. I was like, I need something to actually motivate me to work at home. You know, like, but previous to that, I was always tea. Never drank coffee. Didn't like it. Didn't like what it did to my stomach. Didn't like how it made me need to go to the toilet so often. But then recently, just got into it and loving it. Getting into the packed coffee.
Mate, I'm a convert. I used to be I'm the same as you, nowhere near it. And then as I just got older, I needed it to wake me up in the morning. Night out or a night in?
Definitely a night out. Right now, though, I need a night in. Gee whiz. Had friends leaving on the weekend and, really pushed the boat out. So, but definitely a night out. Like, a night out is always fun, isn't it?
Night out. I imagine with your friends and company, night out are quite common with the people you associate with. Yeah.
There's been a few. I can't go into too much detail on it. But there's been a few. Ibiza's coming up shortly, so that'll be a night out.
I was about to say. I heard Ibiza's on the cards.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's going to be a few salads in between now and then. I tell you that.
Yeah, hopefully it gets shredded. Right. If you had to get rid of one or the other, would you rather get rid of sport or would you rather get rid of dogs?
Sport, definitely. You can't get rid of dogs, can you? That's cruel.
Exactly. I think every athlete I've had on has said the same thing. They'll be like, no, get rid of sport. Right, mate. A TV series or a movie? What would you go to?
Oh, definitely a TV series, I think, because TV series you can, just can drag that out. Because if you like a night out, then on a Sunday you're going to need some content to deal with that night out hangover. So I think, a TV series is definitely the way to go.
I like you thought a proper movie day or a proper day in bed, just binging the series, just 10 episodes back to back.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many good series out, but so many good series out. You got Netflix, you got Prime, you've got Apple, you've got so many different formats and so many different series out. So it's just, I think there's just more series than there are movies these days, isn't there?
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. There's just more option. And plus, there's nothing worse than putting on a film that you decide after an hour and a half is bad when you could have just watched the series to find out.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that right? Rugby or another sport, if you could choose either one to play? If you could pick, would you choose to be a god tier rugby player or would you choose to be a god tier in another sport?
If I choose to be what, like a really good at
like
rugby or really good at another sport?
yeah, God tier. I just call it God
Oh,
tier.
I think I want to be really good at golf.
Mm-hmm.
Purely because of the money involved and the fact that you don't get smashed up and bashed up every week. I think growing up in New Zealand and then coming up against Polynesians, that were the size of a fully grown man when you were 12, 13, 14, 15, is hard work, So, but growing up, if you're playing golf, like you might have a few repetitive injuries, but you're not getting knocked around. It's a lot nicer, and you're going to be a lot richer if you're good at it.
Exactly. Plus, you can do it till you're like old and withered. You can't play rugby past 42.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'd agree. I think golf's a great choice for that one. Right. Best way to have a steak cooked if you're getting a steak cooked at a restaurant.
Yeah, how do you mean, like medium rare?
Yeah, stuff like how would you have it cooked?
Yeah, I'd just have a medium rare. Just chuck it on the barbecue, medium rare, and with a bit of peppercorn sauce, you're good. That's all you need.
You're preaching to the choir there. That's exactly how I'd do it. Right. I don't know if you're familiar with these or not, but I put it in the trailer and then I took it away. I didn't put it, so the fans got mad at me. So would you rather have bourbons or custard creams with your cup of tea?
I don't even know what they are.
Custard
Cream, did you say?
Yeah. Bourbons or
custard cream. Is that like a little?
It's like a little biscuit, two little wafers with a little bit of custard in the middle.
Never had one.
Mate, you've never had one?
Never even heard of them.
Mate, when you do this, send me your address and or go to Tesco's or Sainsbury's, buy them, and I will PayPal you the money for it, and then we can have like a whole social media reveal of which one you prefer. Need a cup of tea, and then you dunk one in. There you go. See,
which ones do you prefer?
I'm a bourbons guy. Always have been. Bourbons is like basically just a chocolate version of custard creams.
Okay.
Mate, I've never met someone who's never had bourbons or custard creams before. You must be one of the only men.
I don't think you get them in New Zealand. I think we have custard squares, which are like just custard, like fat bits of custard with a layer of sugar on top. But yeah, I've never had a custard cream. I'm not sure what one is. I might go and find out later. Straight after I get off this, I'm going to go and find some custard creams. They sound delicious.
I will invoice you for these biscuits because I will pay for your biscuits for you. You can invoice the Over 80 Minutes podcast.
Oh, it's very, very generous of you. I might do that.
There you go. Payment for content. One of my first invoices as a business can be for a packet of bourbons and a packet of custard creams. There you go. Would you rather be a ninja or a pirate?
Well, I'd much rather be a ninja.
Yeah.
That's way cooler. That's as close as you're going to get to Spider-Man.
That's a very good point. I've never looked at it that way. I'd be a pirate personally, but
why would you be a pirate over a ninja?
I don't know, mate. I think it's just I grew up with the Pirates of the Caribbean films, so they were just like Johnny Depp's just a pretty cool guy, and then he personifies pirates to most people.
Yeah, no, ninja, definitely ninja, mate. That's ridiculous. Because you could be a ninja pirate if you wanted.
A ninja pirate? You could just get best of both worlds.
But you couldn't be a pirate ninja.
Could you not be a pirate ninja?
No, you couldn't be a pirate ninja. No, you couldn't. Because a pirate would not be able to be a ninja. It wouldn't fit into what a ninja does and how a ninja operates. But a ninja can fit into any other alias. Like ninja could be a pirate, could be me or you, could be a ninja. But a pirate doesn't work the other way around.
Hey, you've converted me. I've never even thought of it like that. You've got me going. Right.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I'm going to scrap that question for next week now because it's not even a debate in my mind anymore. Just ninjas all the way through. If you were to try and get something organized, are you most likely to be the guy that FaceTimes somebody or texts them to get something organized?
I'll definitely call someone. Yeah, definitely pick up the phone and call them. I hate it when people go backwards and forwards in texting. I'll do a voice note. I'm getting more into voice notes now. It's just much quicker, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you just trash it out. It's much easier.
Exactly. Especially when you just especially for like what could be a 2-minute conversation is 20 minutes worth of text messages.
Exactly.
And last but not least, socks and sliders, yes or no? Are they acceptable fashion?
Not acceptable.
No, not socks
Not
and sliders,
ever.
man.
Never acceptable. No way. And sliders, you're talking about like flip flop kind of things that you.
Yeah, like flip flops without the toe, without the thong, but.
Yeah, no way. That's disgusting.
Oh, mate, I live in socks and sliders. I won't.
Yeah, well, you're disgusting then.
Mate, I'll take it. It's one of the nicest things I've been called.
Oh,
well, there we go. You've survived quickfire questions. See, easy as that. Nothing incriminating. If anything, all you've done is convert probably all my listeners to becoming ninjas when they're older, when they decide they want to become ninjas.
When they have to choose, yeah.
Exactly. So you can be a bourbon and custard cream eating ninja when you grow up. That's what we can do.
Looking forward to it. Looking forward to these custard creams.
Mate, I'm eager to see you try them because they're like God's gift.
Nice. Looking forward to it.
Right, mate. We'll just get started. So I was doing a bit of research on you, as you do, because you've got to research your guests, because otherwise you're not worth your salt. So you started out life as a sports reporter. How did you get into that? Was it a decision that you wanted to make early on, or did it something you stumbled your way across?
No, it was always something I wanted to do. It was always a goal of mine to be a sports reporter, and just turn my passion for sport into work. Didn't really feel like work, but I went into radio when I was about 23. I'd always wanted to get into radio, and it felt like a bit of a pipe dream. Didn't feel like a normal job. Didn't feel like something that, because everyone wants to be, everyone kind of looks up to radio DJs sometimes, and so it seems like quite a far away goal to achieve. It feels like something that only a select few gets to do. So you kind of park it and think, kind of like acting, like if you want to make it in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the same thing, but if you're thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to be an actor. It's like, well, good luck to you, mate. Good luck to you. So I parked it for a while and didn't really do much with it. And then, then I went and studied radio at New Zealand Radio Training School. And following that, I got given a scholarship and got put onto a network top 40 radio station. It's like the biggest music station in New Zealand. It's called The Edge, and had a lot of fun there for a couple of years. But then always was kind of leaning towards the sport side of it, and managed to get a job with a company, a radio station called Radio Sport, obviously. Yeah, and they gave me a job as a sports reporter, and I was there as a sports reporter for about 5-6 years, and throughout that I was obviously covering all different types of sport, everything from rugby, cricket, netball. I did a lot of boxing commentary, a lot of boxing reporting, which I got to fly to Vegas and to Germany and places which were a long way away for someone from New Zealand. And I got a really good kind of overall appreciation for all the different sports that New Zealand tend to compete in, and I really enjoyed it. But then I got a visa to come over to the UK, and I don't know how much you know about visas, but at that time I could get like a 2-year visa, and then I'd have to go home. And so I decided to just do whatever I wanted, a Monday to Friday job instead of getting into sport. I was like, I ain't doing that. I want to get on the booze and travel and stuff in the weekends. So I kind of avoided being get the sports stuff for about a year, and then someone kind of put me in touch with these guys that were starting a company called Rugby Radio. And so I got to know these guys, and what that all it was like fans commentating rugby games. And we were I was commentating a rugby game, like it was during the 2015 Rugby World Cup. And it was pretty low budget kind of stuff. Like for example, me and my mate were commentating the game, and we were watching the game in our living room on a TV and just having gins just Red Bull and gin, Red Bull and vodka, maybe it was. It sounds more like it. And we were sitting there and just commentating these games, and the guys from Rugby Radio really enjoyed it. And but then that was it. Didn't hear from them for a while. Again, didn't want to commentate all the games at the Rugby World Cup because I wanted to be a fan. I wanted to watch it. I didn't want to be working. I wanted to enjoy it. And then they came back about 6 months later, and they're like, we want to start a podcast. We're going to call it the Rugby Pod, and we want you to host it. And we're going to try and find 2 other people for your panel.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, I'm keen. Like, sounds like good fun, and it would be good to sort of keep my finger in that sports media world.
Yeah.
High, for example. So, and so I started doing that, and they were like, and they go, okay, yeah, first episode is with this guy Jim Hamilton and a guy Andy Good. Do you know who they are? I was like, I haven't got a clue. I don't know who these guys are. Seriously, I had never heard of them. I don't know who they were. We don't really in New Zealand. Like you keep tabs from a distance on what's happening over here, but the reality is a lot of the games are played during the middle of the night in New Zealand time. Any game that's played during the daytime over here, which is most games, is the middle of the night in New Zealand. So unless you've got a reason previously or some sort of affiliation to a team, it's not often that you're actually going to watch.
It just doesn't work out.
Yeah, it's like why am I going to get up and watch Harlequins? Like I don't know them. I don't know who they are, and it comes across as a bit arrogant. But it's like, well, we don't know who they are. Like we'd much rather watch our own teams during the day, or our own teams at night. So yeah, I didn't know who these guys were, and first meeting with them, someone had sort of written up all this information for me to work with, and rest is history, really. That's how the Rugby Pod came about.
Oh, amazing! I want to get back to you about the rugby because I was gonna very much leave the Rugby Pod to a little bit at the end because I want it to be about the Andy Rowe show. Like if I wanted to talk about the Rugby Pod, I'd talk about.
Yeah, sure.
I'd get the team up, but I'm going to come back and talk about the end because it sounds like you've got some great stories from there. I want to go back to Rugby Radio, and you're talking about because we had a thing that used to be on telly here, and some of my old my listeners would probably recognise this more new. They had a thing on Sky Sports called Fan Zone, and they literally got a fan, like stereotypical beer belly, tattooed skinhead football fan, and they put him in a game. They put him in a booth with a fan from the opposite team, and they'd just be the pair of them just going like you said, sat in a room drinking gins and just commentating the game. So how did that come about, and how did they decide you were the one for that? Because I'll be honest, if somebody came up to me now and said we'd do it, I'd be all for it. If somebody's like, yeah.
Well, someone that knew me saw a Facebook post that they were looking for people that wanted to commentate games. And by that stage, I'd already commentated. Like I'd commentated an All Blacks game at Twickenham against England. Mm-hmm. Like I'd commentated games in New Zealand. I commentated boxing, so I was quite experienced by that point. And someone was just like a mate of mine just tagged me in this Facebook post, and they got hold of me. I had a chat with him, met up with the boss, this guy Fred, who was running it, and he was just really impressive with the way that he laid out his plan on how they had investors, and they had a plan, a business model, and they had structure, and they had marketing, they had everything sorted out, and I was just super impressed by what he was saying, and wanted to be a part of it. You know, when someone comes up to you and they kind of tell you about this opportunity and it's opportunity that they had and they missed out on back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, like, this is the opportunity that I didn't want to miss out on. This is like this. I believed a lot in this guy Fred. Mm-hmm. I just believed in what he was saying, and his vision and his organization around it. And there was never any surprise that everything worked out the way it did. But yeah, basically that's how I got onto the Rugby Radio. Someone just tagged me in a Facebook post.
Man, that's incredible. Because I think if somebody was to do that here, I think that would take off. Because you know Gogglebox, the show?
Yeah.
Yeah, me and my mates.
Well, this happened in the UK. this rugby radio stuff happened when I was in London.
Did it?
That was,
I thought you said it was in New
yeah.
Zealand.
No. It was something. No, it happened. It happened when I was in London. That's where I met all these guys. That's where the rugby radio guys were and now the rugby pod. They were rugby radio back in the day, and that's why I was over here, and someone tagged me in that Facebook post. And I met this guy in London, and we did it. The 2015 World Cup was over here, so there's quite a bit of noise about it, quite a bit of excitement, and and so I commentated 1 or 2 games for them, and they came back after few months and asked me if I wanted to do a podcast.
That's why I was confused, because I was like, how has somebody in London found you in New Zealand commentating on an English World Cup for the rugby pod? But that makes so much sense if you're over here.
Yeah.
I was like, the guy's really done his due diligence on finding the perfect host if he's gone to the other side of the planet.
No, it was all by chance. It was all by chance. It was all someone that I'd helped out. I'd helped fund it. I helped fund this person a job, and then they were like, "Oh, help!" And then they thought they were helping me out by just tagging me in this rugby radio post. And it turns out they were.
And like you said, the rest is now history.
Yeah.
I mean, I was spoken to you. You said something like that. You said you covered quite a lot of sport. Does that happen? Because I didn't know I enjoyed this broadcasting and talking and interviewing as much as I did until I started the podcast, because I knew I always liked people's stories, but I didn't know how much I enjoyed being the one not interviewing, because I hate to think of this as an interview. I don't like the term interview because I like things conversation, but I didn't realize how much I enjoyed being the one that gets the story out of them and helps them find the interesting parts they forgot. So when you were interviewing all these sports, how did that feel? Like, did you have previous backgrounds in stuff like cricket and netball, like you were saying, from New Zealand, or was somebody just like, "Oh, you've got the netball this Friday, be there at 5:30," and you're like, "Oh crap, I don't know what the positions are"?
No, you learn a lot being on a sports desk. So you wouldn't go straight into commentary. Yeah. So you go into being a sports reporter, and you'd start off as a junior, which I did, and you would get there'd just be stories. There'd be someone else might have done an interview that was on air, and you have to go through and cut out the newsworthy bits, and then over time you get familiar with the people's names, the content. You get familiar with who's in charge of what sport. You get familiar with the coaches, the players, the physios. You know everyone in every sport because you're constantly writing news stories and interviewing people. And then after a while, you kind of graduate into being, you might host a show. Or you might get an opportunity to do like sideline commentary at the basketball, or sideline commentary at the rugby, or netball, or whatever it is, and you grow from there. And you do a good job at that, and then you become the commentator, and then it kind of works like that. You just work your way up slowly. You get opportunities, and you just got to make sure that you take them when they come.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Just back yourself every time something comes towards you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So what did you make of the Olympics? Are you one of those people when the Olympics is on, you become a sudden pro at every sport you're watching? Like I remember we were in. Okay, I'm sorry.
Go on.
Oh no, I was going to say, because we were in Manchester. We were doing a charity football game for the mental health group I'm involved with. And I was with Bristol Women's head coach Tom Lindsay and our other friend Tom Holm, who's the organizer of the mental health group. And we were watching something on somebody's phone. I think it was the Taekwondo or it was the Judo or something like that. And none of us have ever even been to a single class in it. And then you're sat there like screaming at this phone, being like, "Oh, you've got to get more headshots. You're doing so poorly, and you don't have a clue about the sport." Is that how you become when you watch the Olympics, or are you just like, "I'm just going to sit and watch it as a fan"?
No, I try and understand a sport when I'm watching it. I really try and understand what's going on, and if someone's not getting a headshot, I'm trying to find out why. Like, what's so hard about that? Why can't they do it? Or like, what is it that if they're doing high jump, like what are these terms that they're saying? I do find it quite interesting learning about different sports, but of course you start becoming experts on things. Like when the more you watch something, the more you think you know more than other people about it. But I don't really watch that much the Olympics. Like, I find it quite hard because yeah, you said there's so many Taekwondo things on. I don't give a shit about Taekwondo. But there's so many Taekwondo events, and it just felt like that was on all the time, especially because you guys had so many British ones. And I'm only really interested in I'm more interested in the New Zealand athletes when they're performing. So I had to go out of my way to try and find out when they were on, and then try and find a stream somewhere where I could watch it, because they show all the British stuff in Britain, don't they? And likewise in New Zealand, they show all the New Zealand stuff. So it's quite hard to get into the Olympics when you're not in your home country and there's no crowds.
I was about to say the exact same thing, because I always wondered this, because like you said, I was watching it as a British person watching the British people, so I was alright. Like, what's it like as a Kiwi in Britain trying to watch the Olympics? Are you just kind of like, you're not really giving me enough here to watch what I want to watch, or is it fair?
Like, just like I said, like it's not. It's you find it really hard to relate to it, because you don't know these people, you don't care if they win, and so like that's the sport. You know, sport you want to know, you want to have some sort of investment in it. You want one team to win, otherwise why are you watching it? Whereas if you're watching it and you don't know who they are and you don't know who you want to win, there's not much point, and you're not going to get excited about the contest, are you?
No, exactly. Did you see that Ruby Tui's interview on BBC?
Yeah, she was great, wasn't she? Yeah, she went viral. Good on her too. Yeah, it was good. It was good. Like she's really good advertisement for New Zealand, I think. Like, I mean, what a personality.
I said the same thing. We were lucky enough to go to the Lions in 2017, and I said, and everybody, all my friends were it was doing the rounds. Like I said, it went viral, and I was like, I think that's the most stereotypical New Zealand way of celebrating a win I've ever seen. Because it was just there was such humility in it, and there was no bragging about it. It was, you'd think she'd almost lost the way she was being so gracious in defeat or gracious in victory.
Yeah, I mean, New Zealanders get a lot of stick over here for being arrogant Kiwis. Like, you know, we do expect the All Blacks to win. We do. We just like it's what we're just super proud of it. But at the same time, like, we're really embarrassed of people that don't behave well when they win. And there are those in New Zealand that are like that, but and the majority of them aren't. Like, you don't. You know, humility is such a big thing in that country, especially like Maori people, like Ruby Tui, like they're extremely like that. They've just got such a high level of humility and so humble, and that's what she portrayed, and that's what she put out there, and that's why she was such a good representation of not just New Zealand, but like the people especially.
Oh no, they were so lovely. They were so welcoming. So we went to. I don't even want to try to pronounce it because I know I'll butcher it and really offend. It was I think it's just outside Rotorua. It's like the oldest living Maori village. I can never remember it. It begins with a WPH sounding, and then it's quite like, I don't want to say it because I don't want to get it wrong. But they
have a go.
It's Whakawira, or like, my Scottish accent doesn't help anything, but it was. It's either outside Rotorua.
I'm not sure.
Hamilton. It was one of the.
Yeah, I know where Rotorua is. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not quite sure of the place you're talking about. I don't know that area that well. Like, I've been to Rotorua and I've been, Hamilton and stuff, but yeah, I'm not quite sure of the village you're talking about.
Oh, it was there, and then it was such an opening for the lifestyle, because we just spoke to one, and this guy there obviously had a lot of visitors through the Lions tour, and he said he'd always wanted to come. He said he'd never been to Scotland, so we gave him one of our jerseys from our local club here, and he was so nice. Over the moon. Yeah, he was so. It's not a good jersey to have. We're not a very high profile team, but it's oldest club in Scotland though, so that's a bit of heritage that he's got on his wall somewhere.
Oh, nice! He would have loved that.
Yeah. Oh, no, he did, and he was so thankful for it, and it was it was a very infectious way that they share and just open up to people, because it was, like I said, I gave him like a £20 shirt that cost me or something, and I bought it off the team, and he looked like I'd just given him, I don't know, say enough money to live the rest of your life and never have to worry about cash again. And it's just like a nice way to see how people react to different things in the world, especially in Britain, where everybody's wanting something for nothing, and everybody was very open up and just willing to share whatever they had, even if they had very little.
Oh, nice. That's good to hear.
That's just a little story to remind you of home there. But
yeah, sure enough.
Speaking of 2017, I suppose I should probably ask you about it. I know the rugby pod came out today. It's on my phone of notifications to listen to, but what did you make of the Lions tour? Did you enjoy it, or were you...
The one in 2017 or 2021?
2021.
Yeah, it was good. Like, it was good. Like, I was definitely going for the Springboks. So
was that just to wind up the other two, or was that just a...
No, more like it's just they're a Southern Hemisphere team, aren't they? Yeah. And that the Northern Hemisphere can often looks down on the Southern Hemisphere, the way that refs behave, a way that the way that we play the game, or especially like financially as well. I think the way that they treat the Southern Hemisphere, and so I feel like I don't feel like, I know I'm always going to go for a Southern Hemisphere team over a Northern Hemisphere team. Because there's also like that kind of, and also the fact that we play the Springboks, so it's a good gauge. If the Springboks beat the British and Irish Lions, and then everyone's saying that they're the world's best team, it's like, boom, we've got a great test match coming up because we're playing the Springboks this year, and it means so much more. So that's always going to go for the Springboks over any Northern Hemisphere outfit every single time.
I was kind of just a bit over it by the time the third test got there. I think, like you said about the Olympics, the fans really didn't. No fans really didn't help.
Yeah, it kind of takes it out of it a little bit, doesn't it? But I think, like, by the time the tests came around, the tests were good fun to watch. I didn't get into any of the other games. No. Just wasn't interested. I think the Springboks, like the South African teams, weren't able to field their best teams. That most of them were in the camp, in the Springbok camps. I think the Springbok camp where they have like 40 or 50 players in the camp. So like all the best players, were not available for the other games. So that changed things a lot. And no one wants to see blowout scores each week with no crowds. Like, what's the point of watching that?
No, I was the exact same. I remember, what was it, Alan Rowland that said it? He was like, it was the worst advert for rugby the previous 2 months or something, which I thought was a bit harsh. I didn't think it was, it wasn't the best test series we're ever going to see, but I thought it was a bit harsh to say it was the worst advert for rugby I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, I didn't even think it was an advert for rugby. I don't think anyone was watching it. That's the point. Like, no one that didn't watch rugby, the only people that would have watched that are full-on rugby fans. And you're not wanting to advertise to them, are you? You want to advertise to the people to bring them in. And it wasn't an advert at all, because there was like, who the hell is going to watch any of that doesn't know rugby? There's no drama. Every team was getting smashed by 50, 60 points. There's no crowd, so there's no atmosphere, so there's no hype. It was like a pretty poor representation of a Lions tour. But in saying that, like, of course they did great to get it on. There's no doubting that. There's no doubting what it meant to South Africa to make it happen, and they needed it to happen, and I'm glad it did happen.
Yeah.
But as like, if you're asking the question, was it a good advertisement for rugby? No, it wasn't. You couldn't possibly argue that it was, because no one else was watching it apart from rugby fans.
No, I completely agree. Right, mate, I want to talk to you about the Andy Rowe show, because as I said before coming on air, I was a bit late to the party, but I've been really enjoying it. The stuff that you had with the guy from Game Changers, I thought was brilliant. I got a chance to listen to that today. So how did the Andy?
I'm glad you enjoyed that.
Mate, I really genuinely enjoyed it. I'm not even just saying that because you're here, because like I said, I got in contact with you just to talk to you about your interviews before I even asked you to come on here. But,
right, yeah.
So how did the Andy Rowe show come about? Yeah, how did the Andy Rowe show come about? When you listen to the rugby pod, you would notice that my
role on there is very much taking a back seat, letting other people interview, letting other people speak. And it wasn't always the case. When I was talking about earlier that I wanted to be a sports reporter and you hosting shows and commentating games and all that kind of stuff, that was always my goal, and to have my own show. And there's a certain way and a certain type of person that it takes to host a show, and they've got to be like really upbeat. They've got to be this, they've got to be that, and there's like a mold that people have got to fit, and a style that people have got to aspire to become a certain type of broadcaster to host a radio show. So when I was on that was what I was always going to do. And then with the rugby pod, I was kind of started off like that. And then the more I realized my role in the show was not to bring the information, it was to get the information. It was to facilitate. It wasn't to be the star of the show. You don't need to be the star of the show to be effective in hosting a show. Sometimes that's your, like when people, I was very aware that people didn't want to hear what I had to say when it came to all things rugby on the rugby shows. I never played for England or Scotland. Goody and Jim did. So I learned how to interview and how to ask, and I learned my style and my craft. I honed it in 5 years working on the rugby pod. So what I wanted to do is exploit that craft by starting my own show. And the reason why I called it the Andy Rowe Show was because media is a thing about branding, right? If you want to do well in media, people got to know your name. And I knew that
I'm debating changing the name of my podcast now.
Well, it depends. You might not. You got to let me finish here. So I knew that my interviews were not going to be about my personality. I knew that they were going to be all about the person that's on the other end of the mic, the person that I'm interviewing. And I knew that if I could do that, then I could create a good show. I could create what is essentially the same sort of format that you've got in the rugby pod, but with a different person each week, that's talking about a different topic, that's talking about a different life. And if I could keep that same format and get the same out of these other guests, then I could create something that would be successful. And so that's what I did, and it's worked. Like it's the feedback that we get is epic. Like the press that we're starting to get is amazing. And the guests that are coming on, like it all just comes down to the guests. And if the guest is great, then as long as I've done my research, we're going to get a good podcast every single time.
No, you're doing a beautiful. I feel like you've got my notes because you're doing a beautiful, good job of segueing. Because I was going to discuss to you the troubles and the difficulties of hosting a podcast, and you've reached it perfectly. So what do you find most difficult about doing a podcast? Because I think we might be the same. I definitely find getting a guest is the most difficult part of a podcast.
Yeah, it can be. Like in the beginning, it definitely is, because you're getting a lot of you get a lot of no's. You get people saying no, But then I think the research that I do is quite difficult as well. Like I know that my point of difference in a podcast is not going to be because I'm funny. It's not going to be because I can tell a story. It's not going to be, my personality is not going to be the thing that makes my podcast better than everyone else's. That's not going to ever be my point of difference. I'm not saying that I can't tell a story, I haven't got a personality, or I can't tell a funny joke from time to time, but there's so many more people out there that are going to be way better at it than me, and they're not just going to be better at it, they're going to be amazing at it. So give up that fight sometimes and say, that's not me, that's not where I'm going to win. Where I'm going to win is by outworking people and out researching people, and that's the hard part, is creating the time and giving up the time to do the research, and that you're talking about like for 30 minutes content, it might be 12 hours research just to find all the best stuff. So that I think that can be the hard part, but it's also the fun part. It's also the bit that I enjoy a lot as well, because you're like, oh my god, I've got some good stuff here.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's nothing more satisfying than when you're doing your research and you get that little nugget. Because I don't know, because I'm quite lucky, and a lot of my guests haven't really had the exposure of podcasts, so like a lot of their story was pretty unknown. But I can imagine for yourself, when you get these guests on, like you find that one nugget, you think, I've never heard him talk about that before in anything I've heard him talk about. And then, like you say, it creates that little golden nugget of content where you get people like me messaging you going, that story was really good. I really like that bit.
Yeah. It's just about like trying to find all the stuff you can find to read about that person, and finding out what they know, what they're good at talking about, what topics that they're really good on, and that kind of stuff. And that's well, for me, that's what I think the key is. Whether it is or not, I don't know, but that's what I feel like it is, and that's what that's my point of difference. Like I said, like there's always going to be a funnier person. There's always going to be a better storyteller, but I can't imagine anyone's going to outwork me when it comes to research ever.
Exactly. There's only one Andy Rowe, so that's you, fine. There you go.
I wish there were more sometimes. Help me do a bit more research.
Just need a team. Just 2 or 3 would be grand.
Exactly.
Right. So what made you decide to have the podcast? Because obviously you come from the sports background, you come from the rugby pod. Was it a conscious objective to make the Andy Rowe show not sports based?
Yeah, it was. It was. Sorry.
Mate, I'm the same. I'm roasting. My sunlight. The sun is directly in front of my window, so I'm roasting.
Mate, you look like you're melting.
I'm just Scottish.
Yeah. So it was a conscious decision to stay away from rugby.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been offered rugby guests to go on the Andy Rowe show, but it's not. I want to really step away from that genre to try and find stuff that I'm interested in. About like there's so many more things that are interesting than just talking about rugby and talking about sport. I find I've worked as a sports reporter, as I said, for so long that I didn't want to get stuck in doing that as well, because there's loads of people getting interviewed about sports stuff all the time. I'd never rule out a sports person or a rugby person, but I do actively try and stay away from where I can. It just kind of depends on the person as well. If you've got someone that's like amazing talent, that's a real good chat and got some awesome stories, then you're not just going to say no to them on the basis that they play rugby or play another sport. But I just thought there's just so many topics out there that are interesting enough to not have to focus on sport.
No, I agree, because I very much, when I made this in mind, that's why I get people like you, and I've had Bruce on, and I had sports journalist Matt Hardy. I had people like, because what people see is there's so much that goes on, like you'll know yourself, there's so much accessories to sport rather than just the people that play the sports in the field, ring, match, equestrian center, or whatever it is in the pool. And then, like you said, is you're so conscious to try get them, but then as you're starting out, I didn't know whether you would do a few to get the ball rolling, because I just, from people I know, I've definitely found it easier to get rugby guests on because I don't know anybody in any other sports. So what I'm saying is I'm very impressed you've managed to get such a diverse set of guests on straight away, because I've got a lot of Instagram messages that are left unread. This is just seen and not replied. I'm like, oh well.
What you have?
Yeah, I've got a few I've just seen.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I just felt that if there was a good rugby player, we could interview them on the rugby pod, couldn't we? So, and I wanted to sort of set a standard. If they're not good enough to go on the rugby pod, then they probably weren't going to be good enough to go on my show. Why? If the goal is to have the number one podcast, you've got to try and set that standard as early as you can, and have the number one guests. And that's, I think we've done a pretty good job of that. The team's done a really good job of that. And we're continuing to get really good people that are interested in chatting to us. So that we haven't had to talk to rugby people yet. Not ruling them out. Like, if there's a good one, we'll have a chat to them.
Have you ever had a episode that you've done yet where you just thought, either I want to reshoot this because it didn't feel that good to me, or have you ever had an episode and just gone, this is a bit shit, I'm just going to bin it?
Yeah, we've got a few. I think there's probably about 3 of them that we're just sitting there that we haven't used. I'm not going to name them. But there was one person that, had it was quite a big name, like everyone would know who the person is. I did so much research. So I did it worked out to be over 24 hours of research. So I'm not saying I just did a day researching. It was over 24 hours of research for this interview. And then came on, like just before the interview, I got an email from his publicist saying, "Oh, you've only got 3/4 of an hour with him now." I'm like, shit, okay. He comes on, and it just didn't flow. It was just a bit awkward. I did the interview, got a couple of good bits, but it just wasn't up to standard, so we didn't use it. And then another time, I read this guy's book. I read this book about this guy who was shot down during the Iraq War, the Gulf War, a couple of years, in the early 90s. And so read his book. We read 2 of his books, actually, and we got him on the podcast, and he was late. Right, we had a 1 hour slot with him, and he was late. And then he came on, and he was just real. He was like, "Oh, is this going to be for radio, or is this going to be visual as well?" I was like, "We're recording the Zoom, and so it's going to be visual and for podcasts, it's going to be both." So I'll go get changed. In it storms off, goes gets changed, comes down, and then I started asking the questions about his book, and he's like, I don't want to talk about the book. I'm like, what? Okay. He's like, I don't want to talk about the book. I don't want to go through what happened in the book. I'm like, well, that's what we've done. The research is all in the book. He's like, yeah, well, I made it really clear I didn't want to talk about the book. I was like, you didn't make it. You didn't make it clear you didn't want to talk about the book. I was like, what the hell am I talking? Why does he think I'm interviewing him? So I ended up, he was quite disrespectful. So I ended up saying, I think you've been a bit disrespectful to me and my team. We've done a lot of research on you. We've read all your books, and I'm just going to end the interview. So ended the interview. I later found out that through other people that were that had worked with him before, that he already had a reputation of being a bit prickly anyway. But it was just really disappointing that I felt like crying afterwards. I was so gutted, because it's like, what, why would he come on? Why would he come on the podcast if he talk what does he think he's famous for?
I was going to say,
what does he think anyone? There's nothing. I don't know the guy apart from his book. And his book publicist had organised the interview. I'm like, what do you want to talk about, mate? Anyway? So that didn't work out. Another couple that I've done interviews for where I've the interview's just been good, but it hasn't been good enough. You get to the end of the interview and you think it's all right. And I've got 2 other people that edit all my interviews. So I do the research, I do the interview, and then I give it to my producer to edit, and then he edits it, and then someone else edits it. So I kind of wash my hands of it in a way that allows us to be objective about the interviews that we release and the interviews that we don't. Because if I've done all that research, I'll be attached to wanting to share my work. I've done so much work, I want to share it. So it's really important that you have people that are objective at the end of the process that can say, I didn't actually get much out of that. People like the guys that I really respect their decisions, and they'll make calls, that I might not like them, but at the end of the day, like, if they don't like something, then no one's going to like it.
I quite like that. I like that takes a lot of like you said, just like mental toughness as well, to be like, because I assume you obviously get the final say if this is going out or if it's not, but people come to, but to have the be
no, not really. It's really collaborative. You've got to. I think it's really important to make sure that people do know that their opinions are valid and taken on board, and if we're in it together, like if we've all got a shared interest in it being successful, then you've got to value other people's opinions, and especially when deep down that you want to release something because you put so much work into it. Then you have to be able to kind of step away a little bit and go, that's why I want it to go out.
Yeah.
And trust in other people's opinions. That, like, you're not always going to bow down to other people's opinions. You could still push it, but it's not like I've ever said that someone else was wrong about whether something should go out or not. I'm always on board with what they say.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get across. The mental toughness to go, right, well, you two are, well, you might not be correct, but you two, I value your opinion enough to go, right, close the book on that. We'll just chuck it to the side and we'll start something else and we'll go again. Well,
it's a weapon, isn't it? It's a weapon to make sure that your standards are always high.
Mm-hmm.
It's knowing that you can be objective about everything and not be too attached to stuff that you just want to push it out because you think it's all right. Like I think it's what makes our podcast like so successful is that we've got people that will say that's not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And if people are right often enough, then you kind of just back the decision. But I think it's a massive weapon that we've got, is that it is collaborative, and people will let you know where they stand on the content in our team, and that's really, really important. I think it makes us really strong.
Yeah, no, I mean, your podcast is case in point. I've not listened to one that I've thought's not up to scratch yet, so they're still doing all right.
Oh, there's a couple.
if you get a text me going, not sure about minutes 220 through 33 in this one, but no, I wouldn't be that harsh because you'd come back to mine with a fine-tooth comb and go, I'm not sure about episodes 1 through 10, which would be impressive as I'm on episode 8. So
yeah. No, I wouldn't. I'm doing too much time researching,
I like that. Oh, man, any feedback is good feedback. As long as it's constructive, any feedback is good feedback in my book. So then you get the trolls that are just like, your podcast shit because it's you, and I've known you since I was from school. I'm like, thanks, mate.
Oh, nice. It's always nice when someone does that, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't kill me, it makes me stronger, is what I tell myself. Right, mate, so we're approaching the end, and then yeah, that's what I like to think anyway. Right, so we're approaching the end, but before we go, I do want to talk a little bit about the rugby pod, because you are 1/3 of the world's top rugby podcast, and a lot of my listeners are rugby as I get myself off the ground here. So you got yourself on the rugby pod. Your mate was in London. Saw you drunkenly commentating on games. Like you said, you didn't know who Andy Good and Jim were. What was that first episode like when you all sat down to record that?
Oh, it was all right. It was like it was. I had all the, we prepped the show. I'd already prepped the show. I had people prep the show with me. So we knew what we wanted to talk about. It was. I've never gone back and listened to it. I imagine it would be quite awkward. But it was the episode where Jim just started telling the story about Rabbitgate and about the Scotland's World Cup training, and when I think they were in France, they were somewhere anyway, and they were climbing up a mountain, and then they had to kill some rabbits, and anyway, it got into the front page of the Scotland Herald or whatever, what it was, Scotland Sunday Times or whatever it was, and that's kind of what launched the podcast. So I think like the key with those guys is that they are both great speakers. So whenever you're around them, or whenever I'm working with them, I know not much is expected of me as far as talking. I know I'm just there to make sure the next thing happens and that we kind of keep on moving forward. So, but I'm always like, I learned pretty quickly in that first episode that these guys can talk. It's like, it isn't going to be a problem. We're not going to have any dead air. They're both smart dudes, both clever, funny guys with good knowledge on rugby. So, and that's that's why the Rugby Pod is so well known, is because they are pros and they're both very, very good at it. So that's the first episode. I never felt like it was awkward or weird, but I imagine it probably was looking back on it, comparing it to where we are now. But they were both great. I just remember Jim telling his rabbit story, and just like, what is going on here? Yeah, that was good.
So when you, like you say, when you talk to Jim and they just come out with all these stories, has there ever been a case where you've just kind of been like, surely that can't be true? Like you've just like sort of covered the mic and be like, right, pause the recording. Like, are you talking out your arse here, or are you just genuinely telling the truth? Like, is there anything that's ever been like bullshit, Jim?
Oh, well, there's been loads, but we've never stopped. We just let them keep going, because often with Jim's stories, it's better than the truth. It's just when you're caught up in them sometimes, and you're like, I was there, I was involved in that, and that never happened. And like, that's not what happened. But you strap yourself in, and you just listen to the story and know that like actually his version is better than the real version, because he's such a good storyteller. And I was caught up in that when we were over in New Zealand for the Lions tour, and I was sleeping on this like fold out bed, and Jim came up, and we all had jet lag, so we were waking up at like 3 a.m, 4 a.m. Jim came into the living room, and I'm lying there eating some these, they're called the snacks in New Zealand, so like these biscuits that you can dip into like this really gooey cheese. It's so good. I was sitting there, I was like chewing on, like eating those, and there was, the next thing you know, when he's telling the story, is that I was lying there eating cat food, and like, and the way that he's told the story was so much more funnier than the true story. It's just like, oh yeah, well, this is good. Everyone's laughing. Let it go. It's good. But there's so many instances where you're just like, how has he so quickly turned this into such a brilliant story? He's very, very, very good at it, and it's good. It's really impressive to watch. Like, it blows your mind how quickly he can turn a normal chat, a normal everyday occurrence, into something so funny and so outrageous. He just knows which bits to just zhuzh up at the right times. But it's always a bit of fun.
I know. I think he's dead. Did you see if he became like a Scottish talk show host? Like if he became his own version of the Graham Norton, I think it'd be the most must-see telly in the UK. Because, like you say, he can take a boring sentence of you going, I had jet lag and I was eating crackers at 3 a.m. and next thing you know, you've got like a running joke that's over 200 episodes long and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's Jim. Yeah, no, he's a bit of a genius in that respect.
Exactly. I was discussing this with my mate Bruce the other day. He does the Happinesses podcast. Just advertising every podcast on my own, but it's really good if you ever want to listen. Jim's done an episode. Jim's done. If you want an example of a brilliant story that's not that good a story but made a good story, Jim's on that, and he talks about how he went to the World Cup with Alan Jacobson. I don't know if you remember Alan Jacobson, the little Scottish prop.
Chuck.
Yeah. And they talk about how they room together, so you can imagine those two iconic Scottish rugby characters rooming together. And it's a non-stop 15-minute. Just try not to laugh with your headphones in and look like a weirdo in a public place.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Like, yeah, I've heard that story as well. I think when it's like, yeah, when he came back drunk and ended up playing the game of his life or something like that. But yeah, no, it's you're exactly right. Like he can tell an amazing story.
Yeah. So with the podcast, when were you like, this is it? We've made it. This is a proper rugby podcast. Like, we are up there.
Don't know really. Like, I've never really felt like that. I feel like we've been successful. I feel like, you know, I felt like we could do much better. I've never felt like we're made it. We're done. Like I just feel like there's so much growth left in it. Yeah, I know that, like, it's legit and it's, you know, people know it and it's, you know, popular, and we're signed by Spotify. You know, we have live shows that sell out, and that's awesome. Like, all that's awesome. Like, it's so great. You know that that's not normal for all podcasts. And you know, when we go to live shows and, you know, people get there like wanting to hang out with you and stuff, you're like, what? You use people that you've never met before. That, like, it's awesome, but it's not like, it doesn't feel like the journey is anywhere near where it's heading. It feels like there's a lot more growth in the rugby pod, and it's going to end up somewhere a lot bigger. And you know, that's why you keep coming back. Like, you're on the journey, aren't you? And that's, you know, that's why with sorry, also with sorry, it's also like with the Andy Rowe shows, like, you know, that you go through like ups and downs, and like the ratings go up and the ratings go down, and you go through all that, and you just from the experience of the journey that we've had on the rugby pod, like, you know that sooner or later, if you keep putting out good content, it will, like, start to snowball the way you think it will, and it will grow. But yeah, it's the rugby pod. I think there's just a lot more to come from the rugby pod as far as like where we can go and what we can achieve.
No. Tell me about the live show. I'm really interested that you think it's not gone as far, because when I do this, I use. I don't know if you find this when you listen to any other podcast, if you manage to get a chance to listen to them between research, but I now listen to podcasts completely differently. I listen to things that I want to implement into my own podcast. But then, so it's really interesting because the rugby pod is one of the ones that's up there for most people. So for you to say, well, we still see ourselves as down here and we still have things that we look up and aspire to do is a really interesting. I suppose it comes with a mindset of, like, the people you are, and like Goody is, like Jim is, you've all been at the top of everything you've done. So it's quite, I don't know how to say it. It's almost inspiring in a way to see the people that you think are at the top are still saying, no, there's still so much more we need to do to get better.
Yeah, well, I think the grass always looks greener, doesn't it? It's not always the case. Like, I think if you start to feel like, you know, you've topped out, then people are just going to catch you. I know that sounds a bit cliche, but they will. Like, you've got to be constantly searching for ways to improve and get better. I think there's so many great podcasts and great personalities that are so many funny people, as I said earlier, like people that can tell stories, people that can you could go out there and you could put together a better podcast. You could put together people that are funnier, that are people that are more intelligent, people that are better looking. You might struggle with that, I don't know, but the key for us is that because we've been doing it for so long as well, we've got that continuity, but we've also understand what works, understand what doesn't, but also looking for that extra something, always looking for that extra something that's going to make us better. I don't think we ever quite, I don't feel like we ever quite nail it, but you can certainly get close. You do get off the end of the show sometimes, and you're like, that was a really good show, really felt good. That people are going to love that. Same when I did an interview with the Andy Rowe show, you're like, people are going to love this. But then that's done. Like that show's listened to, that interview's listened to. Those ratings have come and gone, and there's the next week. Like, what are you doing next week that's going to be better than last week, or how do you keep that standard up? And it's that constant pressure that keeps you like thinking about, we haven't made it. If we had made it, we'd have people that would be doing all that for us. But we do it all. Like we've got, we're either doing the research, you're putting together the questions, we're finding the guests. It's not, we definitely haven't made it,
I like it because I remember I was watching an interview with a podcast host, and I can't remember who it was for the life of me, but he said that as well. He said the worst thing about having a really good episode is you then have to make sure the next 5 episodes are even better, because you're going to get all these people that come in for that one, and then the next 5 have to be just as good.
Yeah.
So my next 5 guests really need to step it up after this, is what I'm going to tell them.
I don't know about that. I think you might peak. So if you go back,
you're so quietly with that as well. I liked it. It's just so quiet.
If you go back, like sometimes they get better as well. So it depends what kind of podcast you're doing as well. Sometimes, so like for example, if we pre-record 10 people, we'll always put out the best that we've got. So naturally, it's going to tail off. But you'll be doing interviews along the way that you're trying to boost up the quality again. But we always put our best one out, because like if you come and listen to one of my podcasts on the Andy Rowe show, then you should scroll through and see if you like any other ones, because they're all timeless. Most of them are, by timeless I mean they're not time sensitive. So I might have a podcast coming up to Christmas, but I'll never talk about Christmas. Or it might be in the middle of winter, I'll never talk about the weather. So that people can listen to it any time and feel like it's relevant for their situation.
Yeah.
But like if you look at so the idea is that if you do listen to a podcast and you enjoy it, then you will go back and listen to the ones that I've already done. And that's where the standard might improve, hopefully. I don't know if that makes sense.
I'm gaining inspiration from it, and I hope the listeners are gaining inspiration from it, and that's what counts. Because I remember I said this because one of my mates said that. He was like, he was looking at my Twitter page for the Over in 80 Minutes podcast, and he was like, all you do is communicate and interact with other podcasts. And I'm like, well, yeah, because if everybody keeps making better podcasts, then it forces you to get better as well. So the standard just automatically becomes higher, and you have to work harder. Because there's no point I'm not going to walk around trying claiming I'm the first person to ever have a podcast, because that would just be a blatant lie. So you might as well acknowledge that you're in a competition. And right, quickly before we go, because I've only just realized I've looked at the timer and I'm taking up a lot of your time. But like you said, not many other podcasts have live shows, and little that they sell out, and they're almost like a party with 3 guys with microphones at the middle. So what's it like doing a Rugby Pod live show? And is there any standout memories that you can remember?
Hey, they're my favorite part. It's my favorite thing to do as a live show. We've only done one since the pandemic as well, and we did one recently. It was so good. Like it wasn't like the old ones. Like it was before the rules opened up, but it was still a bit socially distanced. But it was still like I just loved it. The live shows, what we live for. That's when if you're thinking about when you've made it, that's as close as you'll get to feeling like you made it. Like that's as close as we get to feeling like we've made it, because everyone there is a fan of the podcast. Everyone there knows you. Everyone kind of feel like they can give you shit, and they know what to give you shit about, because they've listened to the show, and the atmosphere is always perfect. So everyone's always had a couple of beers, a few beers, a handful of beers at least. So they're always rowdy, they're always ready to get stuck in. The crowds are, it's just nothing beats them. The rugby pod crowds are so good. It's so much fun. And I get the best seat in the house. I'm like, literally, I have a couple of questions to get the guys going, and knowing that they will talk and talk and talk and talk. So no pressure on me whatsoever. So I can go in, I'll have a beer and basically get things going, and then I'll hand it over to the crowd and be asking the crowd most of the time if they've got any questions, and that's my job done, and I love it. And the crowds are always great. We usually have a sing song at some point. Everyone's steamed. Everyone's just getting stuck in. People chopping pints. It's so much fun. It's my highlight of when I'm on the rugby pod by far.
I'm so gutted because I remember
favorite part.
I'm so gutted when you were in Edinburgh. I remember, and I tried my hardest to get tickets for me, my brother, and my old man, because we all listened to the pod, and we couldn't get tickets for love nor money, and I was so gutted because one of my friends did, and I think he must have spent at least half his time on his phone Instagramming it, and it looked like the best time I've ever seen. Because there's a video of him and Jim having like a chop-off race with the pints.
Really?
Yeah, and he still claims
this. Go up there, let me know. Next time we go up there, give me a shout, and I'll sort you out with. I'll put your name on the door.
Mate, don't. I'd give it such big looks if my name was on the door. I'd be walking up. Yeah, mates with Andy Rowe, so just.
Oh, we're not going that far. Just names on the door.
You just don't know him, mate.
Next time we're in Edinburgh, we'll get you along to the live show.
Where's the best crowd ever been? Which has been the best show? Oh, not the best show, but who's been the best crowd?
Edinburgh was different. Edinburgh. Edinburgh was. Oh, hang on. No, Wales is awesome as well. Cardiff was amazing. It's been a few. So I'd say Edinburgh. We did back-to-back shows, and I took my bagpipes and played the bagpipes there. That was, and then John Barclay came in. This was when he was the Scottish captain. He comes in on Thursday, chops some pints. I play the bagpipes, pipe him in, chop some pints, goes and beats England at the Calcutta Cup on Saturday. That was amazing. Cardiff was pretty cool. Cardiff, we had Andy Powell just told story after story. And it's like, Jesus Christ, Powley, like he just has some outrageous chat. It was awesome. And then Flatiron Square in London is always a good crowd as well, because you can fit a lot of people in there, and that's always a great time as well.
I mean, how does it not feel a bit weird, like you were saying at the very start? All these people know you, and obviously you know none of them. So these people start rinsing you for things that you've said on a podcast, so you know it's out there. But does it not feel weird when you've got random Tom, Dick, and Harry being like, "Oh, Andy Rowe, I'm looking forward to your stag do in Ibiza," and things like that? Yeah, mate, I don't know you at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's not weird. It's like, because you know exactly what they're talking about, and you know exactly. It took a little bit of getting used to it. It was strange that people will behave like they know you, like that, because they listen to you and they've got you in your ears, and they'll talk to you about the show. And it's I mean, I love it. It's great. It's like it's super humbling that they're listening to your show. It's super humbling that they know who you are and that they are interested in like what the content that you're putting out, because that you're not just talking to no one. That's really cool. And but it's equally it's like, you know, you're just a like normal person having a chat, and people are really interested to have a chat to you. It's cool. Like it's and that's all it is. It's like they know you almost like Goody and Jim know me. Like they, you know, that they hear the same stuff. Like so I hear the same stuff that I hear from Goody and Jim that you hear when you listen to the Rugby Pod. So it's kind of similar. It's almost like, of course, we chat off air and things like that, but there's a lot of similar stuff that we have in common. It's like the idea is that, and this was always the concept with the Rugby Pod. The idea was that I'm in a pub with Andy and Goody having a beer with them, and I'm a fan, and I'm wanting to hear their stories. I'm wanting to hear their opinion on the rugby, and I'm having a beer with them, and that's the concept. So if people feel like they have had a beer with Goody and Jim, and hopefully me a little bit, then that is absolutely job done, and that there's no higher praise. Like that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. Has anybody ever said something that you've forgotten you'd said on the podcast? Like somebody's been like and you've just gone, how the hell do they know about? Oh shit, yeah, I remember saying that now.
A little bit, like, you know, someone brought something up that said I'd like smash Goody in a tackle or something like that, but like, nothing like incriminating. Like there's nothing that caught me too off guard, but it's more like it is a little bit. It is a little bit strange sometimes when they do bring stuff up. It's not like that it stumps you, but you're just like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's I'm talking about that.
Amazing. Well, Andy, I'm at the end.
But it's cool.
It's a great thing, and it's a real, like I said, it sets the bar for people like myself on how to perform a podcast, how to record a podcast, and then the Andy Rowe show just goes to show that you can never do enough research with 24 straight hours on books on Iraq War and pilots.
No, see, you can do too much research in that case.
You just have to ask his publicist if he actually wants to talk about the thing first, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, mate, I'm all out of questions, and I've had an absolutely cracking time listening to your stories. So I'm really thankful that you came on today, and I'm really, really thankful that you gave your time up to come on. So that's the end of the podcast. We're just going to do a quick outro now, let everybody know what's going on, and then we'll go from there. So, well, Andy, thank you so much for your time. That brings us to the end of the episode. Another great over in 80 minutes, and looking at the timer, we're actually almost bang on the money for once, which is pretty good, as normally I waste all my guests' time by making them sit through me mumbling for hours and hours. So, Andy, thank you very much for coming on. Andy, where can they find you on social media?
It's been a pleasure, mate.
Yeah. Where can they find you on social media?
Andy Rowe online is my social media, or _Andy_Rowe on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. And make sure you're going over to this, checking the Andy Rowe show out, because it is properly incredible. The one he's just recently had with, what's it titled? Not a Life Coach with James Smith, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I do my research. Yeah, if you ever want a proper guy that just says what he thinks and doesn't give a shit if you think his opinion is wrong, he is the proper man to have a listen to. That was a really great episode. Remember, Wild Haggis Protein over in 80. All block capitals for the 2 words, over, in, and then 80 is the number. That gets you 10% off on everything on their website. That's the end of the podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a rating. They really, really help. As usual, any constructive criticism, I always want to hear it. I always want to have improve. If you're just going to be mean on social media, or you're going to try to be funny, at least make it actually funny, because then I'm going to retweet it and get some publicity that way, because all press is good press. Thank you very much for watching, listening. See you next week. Thank you guys very much, and we'll see you soon. Bye.